Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today I am very pleased to announce the publication of a book that is the first of its kind. It is the culmination of many years of deliberation on my part, as well as several months of concerted action. This book fills a vacuum, in that virtually everybody becomes introduced to the prospect of death and to the current mortality that we humans unfortunately exhibit as children. Yet, as children, they are not inoculated against the excuses, evasions, and rationalizations for death that have been built up over the course of millennia in order to alleviate the very justified anxiety that people have about their mortality. Well, now, such a book exists. It is called Death is Wrong, and it is authored by me with very skillful illustrations done by my wife, Wendy Stolyarov. And I highly encourage both children and adults to look into this book, because this is the book that I would have wanted to have as a child. This is the book that every child, ideally, ought to read as soon as he or she is introduced to the prospect of death. Because the next logical step should not be to try to accept it or be comforted about it in any way, but to recognize the horror and injustice of death, and to become motivated to fight against it. So Death is Wrong is available in both paperback and Kindle versions on Amazon. It's also available on createspace.com. You can easily find it using a search on either website. It has received excellent reviews thus far. B.J. Murphy, on his blog, The Proactionary Transhumanist, has posted a great review. Also, Zoltan Istvan, the best-selling author of The Transhumanist Wager, has published a review as well as an interview with Wendy and me in Psychology Today. I will link to all of these documents in the references section accompanying this video. In the meantime, I would like to read out a brief excerpt from Death is Wrong, from the beginning, which describes the start of my personal journey during the time when I discovered about the prospect of death, and when I resolved that I would personally devote my time to fighting against it. Thank you very much. This is the book I would have wanted to have as a child, but did not. Now that you have it, you can discover in less than an hour what it took me years to learn in bits and pieces. You can instead spend those years fighting the greatest enemy of us all, death. Gennady Stolyarov II. When I was little, numbers fascinated me. I learned to count at age 2 before I even learned to read. When I was 4 and living in the city of Minsk, I was introduced to years as a way of tracking time. I saw a shiny new ruble coin with the number 1991 written on it, one of the last coins of the Soviet Union. By then I was already comfortable with numbers up to 1 Google, one followed by 100 zeros. But my first notion, when I learned about years, was that 1991 years were all that had been. I recall being told that my grandfather was a child during the years 41 through 45, when the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union and he had to flee. I did not know that these numbers were abbreviations for 1941 and 1945, so I made the reasonable guess that my grandfather was around close to the beginning of time. But I was also curious about what the passage of time would do to people. Once I asked my mother, "What happens when people grow up?" "They go to school," she replied. "And then?" "Then they go to university." "And then?" "They work and get married." "And then?" "They have children." "And then?" "Their children have children. They retire and help raise their grandchildren." "And then?" "Their grandchildren have children. 3 of my 8 great-grandparents were still alive at the time." "And then?" "And then they die." "Die? What does that mean?" "It means they stop existing." They are just not there anymore. But why do they die? Do they do anything bad to deserve it? No, it happens to everyone. People get old and then die. It is wrong, I exclaimed. People should not die.